The last empires we're going to take a look at here in Unit 2 are going to be the Mauryan and the Gupta empires, and they're both in India. One thing to note with India is that there aren't going to be a lot of empires there because of how, or very, very powerful empires, because India is a very diverse region. And there are many separate kingdoms that you have to try to unite, and there isn't great infrastructure and ways to get around the subcontinent to actually go and conquer them. So um, we'll see Chandra Gupta Maurya will be the first one to really unite India, or the majority of India under his rule. And he creates a well-organized government that's centered around him being the leader. He collects taxes, he builds roads, and he builds harbors to improve the trade and the connection between the whole region. And he does an excellent job, but he's a little bit of paranoid in that he thinks someone's always trying to kill him. So he'll eventually retire a little bit early. He won't go all the way till his death and retreat. And his son will take over, and then his son will have a grandson who will actually expand the empire to its greatest extent. And we can see that here on this map with Chandra Gupta Maurya in that blue taking over those regions, and then Ashoka creating all that pink area. And he expands, again, India to its furthest extent, or this empire into its furthest extent. And it's one of the furthest, or the most conquered India is during any of its empires up until modern times, or more modern times. And so Ashoka, he was a great military general, but at the battle at Deccan Plateau down here in the south, he sees hundreds of thousands of soldiers die on both sides, and he says, I can't take this fighting anymore. And he's just being torn apart by it and all the death and carnage he saw. And so there's a new religion that comes up called Buddhism, and that gives him peace, and so he converts to that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Buddhism next week when we talk about religions. But with this, he rejects violence, so he stops fighting. He brings everyone under a peaceful rule. He spreads Buddhism. That's one of his big things, and why Buddhism becomes a major religion. He also preaches tolerance of the other religions like Hinduism and any other religion that comes into the region. And he sets up a law code based on Buddhism that teaches people how to be Buddhist, or how you should be acting towards each other. And he puts this law code on pillars that are spread throughout the empire to teach people about that. Very similar to Hammurabi's code, just not as much eye for an eye type deal on that. But after Ashoka, the empire starts falling apart, and we'll eventually get a new empire that rises up a few hundred years later with the Guptas in 320 CE, and they'll last till 550 CE. And they have a strong central government. They're also founded by a Chandra Gupta, who leads it in a similar style to what we see with Chandra Gupta Maurya. But instead of promoting Buddhism like Ashoka did, they promote Hinduism. But they also preach tolerance with that. And so this will lead to peace and prosperity and lead to a golden age in India with great literature coming out and also many new scientific and mathematical discoveries. And so we have things like in medicine, inoculations or vaccines being developed, C-sections, plastic surgery, all those things. Mathematics, the decimal system, the concept of pi and zero. And in astronomy, the solar calendar that's accurate, and understanding that the Earth is actually round and not some flat disk flying through space. And the biggest thing on top of those accomplishments they have is they are a major reason why the Silk Road is allowed to flourish. Again, we saw Han China and Rome being the ends of this, but with the Gupta Empire in the middle, it allows for some stability there and allows for the Silk Road to flourish, and will eventually allow another trade route to flourish known as the Indian Ocean trade that goes from the Middle East to China as well, just it's more sailing than a land route like the Silk Road was. And the Guptas will last, again, until 550, and they'll last until a Hunnic invasion, and we'll see kind of a common theme here at the end is the Huns cause major problems for these empires. The Huns were a nomadic group, pastoralist group in Mongolia and Central Asia, and a group of them will come down and attack India and knock India out with the Gupta Empire. Part of them will go and attack China and knock the Han Dynasty out, and another part will go to the west and almost knock out the Byzantines, but the Byzantines are able to hold them off. But they will be a major blow to the Roman Empire in the west and lead to their fall. And the reason why they're able to do this is because the Gupta leaders were weak, and that is kind of the same theme throughout all these empires at the time, and that China's emperors were weak. Rome's Western empires were very weak, and so that leads to all these groups falling apart because of the Hunnic invasions. And that will bring an end to this era with the major empires.